Hello friends, welcome to my channel. The God Code Exposed. Julie McFadden revealed what the majority of patients claim to have seen before they pass away. There is a lot of speculation surrounding what we see just before we shuffle off this mortal coil. There's our entire lives flashing before our eyes, a bright white light, or a complete out-of-body experience, to name a few. We can all take a wild guess, but ultimately, none of us will know what the last thing we lay our eyes on will be until our time eventually comes. And unfortunately, we can't come back and tell anyone. However, there are a few people with more insight than most, such as hospice nurse Julie McFadden. She's held plenty of patients' hands as they enter their final days, but still doesn't fear death and believes that we should educate ourselves about what happens as much as possible ahead of time. The Los Angeles-based nurse, who shares her insights into end-of-life care online, thinks that people should know about the dying process before they're actually going through it with a loved one or themselves. She shared a nugget of knowledge from her experience about the one thing which almost everybody sees before they pass away, while appearing on the Skeptic Metaphysicians podcast. Former ICU nurse Julie told hosts Will and Karen that the overwhelming majority of patients she has cared for usually claim they have been visited by people who have already passed on about a month before they die. She explained, "One of the main things that happens to almost everybody, it's usually about a month before they die, they start seeing people who've already died. It's always people who bring them comfort. So I say family members, but it's only really family members if you had a good relationship with them. They'll see their parents, their grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, cousins, pets. People who have already died come to them, and it's usually physically. Sometimes in dreams, but it's usually physically." The end-of-life nurse said that it is quite the phenomenon, as these people are not even on the brink of death at this point. Julie continued, "And they will say, 'Hey, I'm coming to get you soon. You don't have to worry about anything, will be here around you.' Most people who experience this are completely lucid. They're alert and oriented. They're not actively dying and hallucinating. There's nothing like that going on. As a healthcare professional, we know what hallucinations look like, what delirium looks like, what hypoxia looks like. It's not that. It's like a very distinct thing that happens. Believing that people are on the other side waiting for you to join them certainly proved to be a source of comfort to a lot of people, who said the nurse's words helped them understand the transition. One social media user commented, "My mum saw and heard her sister and aunt. They brought both of us comfort. She didn't feel alone or scared." Another wrote, "Thanks for sharing your knowledge. It's very helpful." A third added, "This is so comforting." And a fourth said, "My pets, I can't wait to see them." Nurse says there is one phenomenon people experience just before they die. The human body is remarkable, even when it's close to death. Death is something that terrifies most, however. There are natural occurrences that happen to the brain and body, which might actually make you feel more at ease before you pass. For example, Julie McFadden, a palliative and intensive care nurse in Los Angeles, has spoken about witnessing many of her ICU patients being visited by family members who have already died. Kind of like your personal guardian angel, who is there to comfort you before you join them in the afterlife. Known as visioning, a lot of people in her comment section under her TikTok explained their experience with family members going through this and how it brought them comfort during the end. She also went on to talk about the death stare phenomena, where a patient will stare off into the distance and can't be snapped out of it. Apparently, this is them seeing things such as angels, old friends from the past, or being in a state of contentment. But now, Julie has explained something that is a little unexpected for a symptom of impending death. They act like their old selves. Now, if you know Grey's Anatomy, you'll probably remember this phenomenon with Mark Sloan. Dubbed the rally, Julie explained to her followers, "Here's one phenomenon that happens during the death and dying process that medical professionals like myself cannot explain. This is when someone is really sick and almost towards actively dying, meaning dying within a few days, and then suddenly they look like they are better. This can manifest in different ways, but a lot of times they suddenly will eat, they'll suddenly talk, maybe even walk, they act like their old selves. They have a little more of a personality, kind of laughing, talking, joking, But then usually they die within a few days after this, sometimes even that night, and it happens to probably a third of our hospice patients, so it happens quite a bit. We try to educate the family about this before it happens, so it doesn't devastate them when they suddenly pass after doing so well for a few days. Also known as terminal lucidity, there are several signs that someone you love is experiencing their end-of-life surge. What are the symptoms of terminal lucidity? WILD, a will writing and funeral planning service, shared the signs most commonly associated with the rally. Suddenly seem lucid and physically stronger, wish to prepare a will or other important end-of-life documents, give away belongings, want to resolve conflicts, ask to speak to a religious leader, look around for misplaced belongings, request to assist with their own funeral plans. Her followers also agreed with some of the above symptoms and commented what they had witnessed during the rally. One shared, "I was so grateful for my mum's rally. I got a wonderful, fairly lucid morning with my mum. We talked, laughed, loved. 3 days later, she died." Another said, "As a hospice nurse, I tell the family that I believe it is nature's way of giving them time to say goodbye, enjoy, or complete unfinished business." Someone else wrote, "Yes, my husband got on the lawnmower and mowed 'I love you' into the lawn for me, and he passed 3 days later." What causes terminal lucidity? The short answer is that more research is needed to fully understand the phenomenon, which in some ways contradicts what we think we know about the human body. Some experts suggest that the brain's cognitive functions and memories work a little differently during terminal lucidity than they would normally do. Scientists have theorized that fluctuations in brain functions cause the brief period of lucidity before death, according to Healthline. Hospice nurse opens up about one of the wildest moments she experienced with a patient as they died. A hospice nurse has recalled one of the scariest experiences she's had with a patient as they passed away. Julie McFadden, known as Hospice Nurse Julie on social media, is known for sharing her experiences in end-of-life care as she aims to remove the stigma around death. The 41-year-old has almost 3 million followers across her accounts, with 1.6 million coming from TikTok alone, and has even written a book which teaches people about what happens in your end-of-life journey. But now she has recalled a wild experience with a patient that was actively dying. The end-of-life specialist recalled one of her scarier experiences. The end-of-life specialist recalled one of her scarier experiences. The end-of-life specialist recalled one of her scarier experiences. McFadden, who aims to normalize death and dying and remove fear from people's minds, has previously explained that active dying is the set of behaviors that occur right before someone passes away. It's essentially the final stage of someone's life, and she has now claimed that she could hear one man's voice despite the fact he was unconscious at the time. The nurse recalled the man's last moments in a video, revealing that she got to know him, but sadly saw him enter the active dying phase. While he was under the supervision of a continuous care nurse, the health expert said that she knew he would die the same day that she saw him for the last time. However, what she experienced during this final encounter wasn't like anything she'd seen before. When he was in the actively dying phase, which means like the very last few days of death, we had a continuous care nurse in there caring for him on his last days, she said in the YouTube video. McFadden continued, "And when I last saw him, he was fully unconscious, and I could tell as a hospice nurse that he was going to die that day. So I was in his room and I was kind of saying my goodbyes silently to him, and that was it. But as she was leaving, she thought about their relationship, thanking him, and claimed that there and then she could hear his voice in her head. Despite having years of experience under her belt, this incident threw the nurse off. Despite having years of experience under her belt, this incident threw the nurse off. Despite having years of experience under her belt, this incident threw the nurse off. The nurse said it was wild, as things like this don't happen to her, and she even admitted that it was hard to talk about as she was skeptical about it all. As the man's voice kept talking in her head, she explained, "He was saying my name. He was going, 'Oh my gosh, Julie, oh my gosh, Julie,' and he was making me feel things. I could feel like exuberance or freedom or like I was flying almost," she claimed. McFadden previously revealed that one of the scarier parts of actively dying is the death rattle. It's literally just a bit of saliva collecting at the back of their throat. Because their mouth is open, their breathing is going over their saliva and causing a gurgle, she explained. But while that is common, hearing a dying person's voice in your head isn't, believe it or not.